FD&C Red number 40, Allura Red AC, or
E129.
It appears in over 36,000 food products across American supermarkets and in other supermarkets around the world. It is the most widely used synthetic red dye in the United States, and it's found in everything from breakfast cereals to medications. This documentary This is not a documentary. This video will serve the purpose of examining the history, science, and most importantly, controversy surrounding the petroleum-derived chemical that has colored our food supply for over 50 years. Red 40 moment! We love Red 40! Don't we, Frankie? In 1856, British chemist William Henry Perkin, I call him Billy Perks, accidentally created the first synthetic organic dye called mauve. He did this while attempting to synthesize quinine, which, what is that? I have no idea. It's something from some kind of bark. It's an alkaloid, some shit like that. I have no idea. But this discovery launched the synthetic dye industry, with many early colorants being derived from coal tar, a byproduct of coal processing. By the early 20th century, investigations revealed many food colorings contain dangerous substances, including, take a wild guess, lead, arsenic, and mercury. Everything back then had lead, arsenic, and mercury in it. These toxic substances were sometimes used to mask inferior products or spoilage. For example, if your red isn't looking red enough, add lead. That's what the 20th century people would say. They'd say, hey, just add some lead in that. It's a soft metal, it's really fun. You should try feeding it to your children as well. In response to this insanity, the Pure Food and Drug Act of 1906 reduced the permitted list of synthetic colors from approximately 700 to just 7, which is quite a culling of the herd there. The Color Additive Amendments of 1960 further tightened regulation, requiring that all color additives must be proven suitable and safe, whatever the that means, before use in foods, drugs, or cosmetics. In 1971, the Allied Chemical Corporation developed Allura Red AC, which we now know as Red 40. Chemically, Red 40 is produced through azocoupling combining diazotized 5-amino-4-methoxy-2 toluenosulfonic acid with 6-hydroxy-2 naphthalene sulfonic acid, which is kind of epic. This creates a synthetic compound not found anywhere in nature, believe it or not, and it's so red that it's crazy. Red 40 was specifically developed to replace Amaranth, not the OnlyFans live streamer, but Red number 2, another dye which was banned in 1976 after a bunch of people died, and studies linked it to intestinal tumors. By 1980, annual Red 40 production exceeded 2.3 million kilograms. Today, according to the USDA data, it appears in more consumer products than any other red dye. Yeah! Woo! Also, back then it was fine, I think. Now it's bad. Things change. Scientifically speaking, Red 40 consists of a naphthalene sulfonic acid that comes as a dark red powder or granules, and they can be put in some kind of, what is it called? Water? Carrier, I guess? Carrier agents? I'm not really sure. I didn't write that part down, so sorry about that. Unlike some natural colorants, Red 40 and other synthetic dyes undergo mandatory batch certification, which means every production lot must be tested by the FDA to ensure it meets strict identity and purity specifications, which is definitely a good sign. That is absolutely excellent, you know, all things considered. But that being said, people are still concerned about it, and scientifically, the science people are also concerned. Most of the concerns in regard to Red 40 center around 3 main areas. First, carcinogenicity. A 2010 review in the International Journal of Occupational and Environmental Health found that Red 40 and other FD&C yellow dyes contain trace amounts of benzidine, a known human carcinogen, aka what I feed my dog Frankie instead of food. And she's doing just fine. The FDA considers these levels too low to pose a significant cancer risk, but some scientists argue that cumulative exposure remains understudied, like most things we consume. The second main point of contention, behavioral effects, particularly in children and pugs. In 2007, researchers at Southampton University conducted what became known as the Southampton Study, an infamous study of red dye number 40. They found increased hyperactivity in some children that consumed the dyes, and while the study did have limitations, including difficulty isolating effects of individual dyes, it prompted significant regulatory changes in Europe. Well, yeah, Southampton people, when you're giving them Doritos with red dye, of course they're gonna be excited as shit running around. I was just excited to eat red dye when I was a kid. It's red. In 2010, the European Union began requiring warning labels on foods containing these dyes, stating that they may have an adverse effect on activity and attention in children. The FDA reviewed the same data in 2011, but due to our American excellence, voted 8-6 against similar warnings in America, citing insufficient evidence of a causal relationship between this hyperactivity and this red dye being bad. No causal relationship, only it's kind of a friends with benefits type thing, I would say, more so. Just, you know, like some anal pound. The third point of contention is in regard to emerging research that has raised new questions. A 2023 study published in the Journal of Toxicology found that red 40 caused DNA damage, colonic inflammation, and negatively impacted gut microbiomes in mice, which everybody knows are basically just tiny little people. The research noted that the increasing consumption of synthetic food dyes over the past 40 years has coincided with the rising rates of early onset colorectal cancer, though a causal link has not been established. More of that anal stuff. Also recently, a December 2022 assessment by the California Office of Environmental Health Hazards, their assessment concluded that the current levels of synthetic food dyes in American diets may exceed safe levels for children based on behavioral effects and what is observable, which I don't know how much I trust California, to be honest. They're the ones who forced us to say that lead's in stuff. Lead Prop 65. Lead is good filler. All right, how do you think Taco Bell tastes so good? Try to play some historical footage of Halloween 1950. So that's all recent. Back in the olden days, and by that I mean the 1950s, when food dyes were extremely popular, and shit was still really dangerous in regard to food. It's still very dangerous, but it was just more dangerous. Now it takes 30 years and a massive epidemiological study to prove something is bad. In the 1950s, people just died. They just died, and they were like, well, why? It's like, he ate something yellow. Was it a banana? No, it was a corn chip, and it wasn't yellow enough already, so we added yellow to it. The regulation of food dyes was forever changed in the 1950s by a series of tragedies. We're gonna get into it in this video. Luckily, it's been long enough I can still keep the lighthearted tone I love bringing to everything that I do. The most significant, this is about to get really bad, by the way. The most significant documented disaster linked to food colorings occurred in 1950 when a Halloween extravaganza unfolded across America. Dozens of children became ill with severe diarrhea and abdominal crampings after consuming candies and various little sweets and lollies. And we've talked about people poisoning candy before. This wasn't the work of a ne'er-do-well tampering, but rather a food dye called Orange No. 1, which was approved for use in, take a guess, the year 1907, which is a long time even before 1950. Okay, that's when Red Dead Redemption 1 takes place. Orange No. 1 looked like this. So Orange No. 1 had been around since 1907, but in 1950, manufacturers used exceptionally high concentrations of Orange No. 1, pure Orange No. 1, to make the candy Halloween color and orange and shit. In some cases, this wildly orange and delicious candy would reach 1,500 parts per million orange, which is extremely orange. It's orange, it's not the color, it is made of orange. What is that? FDA testing revealed that the dye was unquestionably toxic and caused definite damage to various vital organs of the test animals that were tested, and significant changes in their body weight, and let's hear this, premature deaths. They eventually did studies on human volunteers, and you guessed it, they experienced severe gastrointestinal distress, like dogs with parvo, and this was after consuming just 1 to 8 pieces of the tainted orange candy shit. Roll a footage of a congressional hearing from the 1950s. Thank you. I really appreciate that epic edit. This incident in 1950 prompted the U.S. House Representative James Delaney to begin holding hearings on the potential carcinogenicity of food additives. These hearings ultimately led to the Color Additive Amendments of 1960, which we mentioned earlier, and they fundamentally changed the way that regulating bodies approached synthetic dyes. This wasn't the last time, by the way. This was just the big kahuna in 1950 where they made shit insanely orange. Similar incidents continued to occur. In the 1970s, red number 2 was banned after tests showed a link between its carcinogenic properties and intestinal tumors in laboratory animals. Bad. Red number 2, by the way, that's the Amaranth one, not the OnlyFans streamer and or girl. It is like the plant. Amaranth's a plant, right? Or am I making that shit up? Comment down below. I ain't looking it up. I don't give a f. You know how much that affects me? 0. How about this? Little piece of gum for you. Beyond these mass incidents, individual severe reactions continue to occur. Among the most dangerous is anaphylaxis, which is what happens when you have an allergic reaction and your body's just like, oh, I guess this is it. That yellow coloring did me in. Anaphylactic shock from food dye exposure begins familially, similar to other allergies. The symptoms, they begin and then they rapidly worsen. Breathing becomes difficult as airways constrict, blood pressure drops dangerously and without immediate emergency treatment, typically an epinephrine injection, one of those little things from DayZ. That followed by hospital care, death can result. Rest in peace, weaklings. I shouldn't say that, should I? Allergic reactions to food dyes are pretty rare, relatively speaking, on the list of allergies, and they are unfortunately also frequently misdiagnosed. One complicating factor is that reactions often follow inconsistent patterns. A person, for example, might react only to the red cookies from a package, but not the brown ones, making the connection to color dye difficult to establish. One 24-year-old woman reported experiencing throat closure within minutes after consuming wild cherry Slurpees on multiple occasions. I don't know why you would keep on eating Slurpees, dude. If I got took down by a Slurpee, I'd be sad as f. Go up there, see God. What did you in? And you're like, Slurpee. He's like, you ain't getting in here, you weak as f. Get down there with hell. It's red down there. You love it. She also unfortunately developed facial rashes after eating red-colored baked goods, and diagnostic testing revealed that she was reacting specifically to Red 40, which requires permanent avoidance of the ubiquitous dye that is basically in everything. And by the way, allergies to Red 40 are extremely rare, more rare than pretty much all the other ones. Yellow 5 is a rascal. I know a lot of people who are allergic to yellow 5 growing up. On top of that, poor gal, online forums contain thousands of personal accounts describing severe reactions. Forums like Reddit and or 4chan. It's gone, but Reddit. People are always talking about dyes on Reddit. They love talking shit. And then there's a lot of people who are like, well, actually, listen to the Food Science Babe. It's not actually that bad. It's like follow the science, trust the experts, or whatever, which I do. I genuinely do. I have to, because I make food products. One individual reported going into anaphylactic shock from any food dye consumption. I probably think this person made that shit up, mainly because I used Quora as a source for that claim, which is the greatest source. It will be in the comments down below. People are up in arms about dyes, specifically Red 40, and we've got a history. We've laid out a bit of a history with how negative they can be. Orange number 1 in the 1950s, people just dying. In the 20th century, the 19th century offers an even darker historical parallel to what's kind of currently going on right now. Scheele's green, a popular dye, contained arsenic and caused widespread poisoning through wallpaper and fabrics. Victims suffered rashes, vomiting, abdominal cramps, headaches, and severe illness. Arsenic poisoning! And they died. Some of them died sometimes because it was green. Now, modern synthetic dyes obviously undergo far more rigorous safety testing than Scheele's green did back in the old days, back in the good old times, but all of this can serve to remind us that aesthetics may sometimes come with hidden costs. Also remember, in order to lay pipe, you've got to get hard first. What's interesting to me about dyes is that preservatives have a purpose, okay? They're bad, they have a purpose for microplastics, gum, stuff like that. It's got a purpose, but dyes just are purely visual. There's no health benefits. A lot of people say you can't even digest them or metabolize them. They're like petroleum-based. They just, you eat too much and you just piss it out, right? But there are studies showing you can, in fact, metabolize Red 40. And it is very bad when you do that. Some things that are objectively bad for you can serve a functional purpose, but others are just there for aesthetic visual appeal, and they provide no nutritional value, and they just hurt you as well. So it's like, what the fuck is the point of that? In the United States, the FDA, to this day, in spite of things that have happened recently, which we're gonna talk about, they maintain that Red 40 is safe at current consumption levels. And a lot of very smart people who are very intelligent, who are not out to get you, also maintain that Red 40 is safe at current consumption levels. Sir, does it make your little kid run around a little crazy maybe? Probably. But maybe that's because the red dye is in Mountain Dew, and maybe he needs to exercise more. Critics of a lot of these safety claims point out that the FDA and in general, a lot of studies haven't been done to truly and purely reevaluate the safety of something used in most everything that's red that is eaten by human beings in the West. Specifically the United States of America, West, very extremely West. So yeah, maybe a bit of a reevaluation is due or whatever, but spoiler alert, yeah, it's bad, it's gone, it's banned. It's all banned. It's all banned. You've got 2 years to get rid of it. Once again, we'll get into the current banning, the current situation, but the approach to synthetic dyes in the United States differs dramatically. Red 40 is one of 9 synthetic color additives currently approved by the FDA in the United States of America, and the approval process follows what regulators do call a risk-based approach, which requires evidence of harm before restricting use, which is the whole 6 to 8 vote saying, nah, 6 of us think it's bad, but 8 of us think it's good. So, you know, let's leave it. How about that? How about you leave it to a vote on Facebook? Now, our brothers in the European Union initially took a different approach to synthetic dyes. Red 40 was previously banned in Denmark, Belgium, France, Switzerland, and Sweden, but in 2008, the EU adopted a common framework for food additives under which Red 40 became permitted across the EU member states, though with the warning labels after the Southampton study, and that's very important to note. Norway and Iceland banned azo dyes, including Red 40, between 1978 and 2001, which was a restriction that has been since lifted under EU harmonization because they got absorbed. All right, post-Soviet Union, you know, in which they weren't in the Soviet Union, but still neighbor states and like the EU. Ingest me, roads, tax, roads, happiness. The fuck are you guys doing over there? It's kind of interesting, the disparity in how regulatory bodies interpret studies and information around the world. The EU, they're precautionary. They're like, well, let's delete this, get rid of this, just in case it hurts people. There's other stuff that's red, and the FDA is like, hey man, 8 to 6, you son of a bitch. You lost fair and square. Let's fist fight. U.S. critics like Dr. Gerald Manda of Nourish Science have argued, the American people are different about this. We wear a sort of badge of honor that we reject the precautionary principle. Do we? Actually do that? I don't. So it's kind of bad, it's kind of good. Why would a food producer, a food manufacturer, use a synthetic dye like Red 40 when you can just make things red with beets or purple carrots or other red stuff that actually exists in nature, and it's maybe harder to get. Maybe it's more expensive. That's the significant advantage, is that it's cheaper, more stable, and even more colorful than natural alternatives. You have to use way less of it. I mean, it's evil. It just exists forever. So like you don't have to put it on a shelf, and it doesn't smell like food, and it's easier to mask the flavors of it. It's just, there's so many advantages, which is why we're announcing our switch. Sour Boy Sour Candy, my candy company, sour.gg. We are now officially switching from using purple carrots and beets to color our red products to Red 40. Just kidding. We've been using natural flavors and natural dyes in the candy for as long as it's existed. I don't even think this has dropped yet. And maybe this will drop on Friday. I'm not sure. We use natural stuff, and we try to make the best possible products that can be eaten in moderation. Go to sour.gg. Science aside, consumer preferences have been shifting, which creates market pressure that goes beyond just regulatory requirements. People say, it's got Red 40 in it, that's bad. Seed oils, that's bad. People say, I like tallow. People say a lot of shit, honestly, and it's just obviously their preferences, and they're going to vote with their money, and they're going to make decisions and influence using their dollar and dime, which Totally respectable in my opinion. I do that. Now, some manufacturers have voluntarily reformulated their products to remove synthetic dyes in response to customer demands, but this demand and response to the demand for cleaner ingredients doesn't always stick. For example, in 2015, Kraft Heinz changed their macaroni and cheese recipe to use natural colors. That's pretty cool. And then just after that, General Mills, cereal giant, introduced a naturally colored version of Trix cereal, the insanely bright and disgusting breakfast cereal that thousands or millions of people probably eat daily. But then General Mills later reversed course when consumers rejected the less vibrant colors when they said, "That's not bright enough. My cereal's too dim. Add an emissive texture. What's the shader on this? You want color? Eat a vegetable." They should make everything that's bad for you gray, and nobody would eat it. There is an obvious fundamental difference in regulatory philosophy around the world, and this helps explain why a lot of bad shit is still permitted in America, but is restricted elsewhere. In April 2025, the Department of Health and Human Services and the FDA announced plans to phase out all petroleum-based synthetic dyes from the nation's food supply, including Red 40. And this is by the end of 2026. HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. characterized the issue quite starkly. He said, I love RFK, I really do. He's the funniest guy in all of politics. He's like, we found a bear in Central Park. Me and my children, we cut up a whale. I took the bones home. Make furniture. FDA Commissioner Marty McCary added on top of RFK's statement, I'm not gonna do the voice again, for the last 50 years, we have been running one of the largest uncontrolled scientific experiments in the world on our nation's children without their consent. And to that I say, wildly based, wildly red pill. I do like that attitude a lot. I love the changes, the precautionary changes. I love science, obviously, but there's science shows that there's some bad shit, and then it's just like 8 people think it's not bad enough, and those 8 people are probably lobbied and paid for by Big Dye. Big Orange is probably putting cheddar in their pockets, leaving them stained with an unnatural orange hue. Comment down below. Do you guys like the change by the Department of Health? Is it purely political for you? If it was a different administration, would you like it? You know, look past yourself. Do you not give a f? Do you think people that are sick when they come into contact with dyes are just weak and lame? Because so do I. But also, I like cleaning things up. I like that. I think that's really good. A 2003 analysis in the Journal of Epidemiology found higher rates of ADHD diagnosis in countries with greater per capita synthetic dye consumption, though researchers noted multiple confounding variables making causation difficult to establish. For example, if you eat a lot of red dye, you probably eat a lot of shit too. And probably, just like the vegan diet, right? If you ate a pure whole foods vegan diet and also 3 ribeyes a week, you would never be able to convince me that that is less healthy. If you ate a whole foods vegan diet and had a teaspoon of red dye, or maybe a little bit less, it would probably, in my opinion, be better for you than if you ate a teaspoon worth of red dye in the form of Doritos or whatever I just feel like the dye probably is worse because it's also with other stuff. And maybe those other things act as it's a multiplier, like a high score multiplier, you know, fellow gamers? Frankie, can you stop licking? It's really annoying. And you didn't do it this whole time, and now you're starting to do it, and it's really bugging me. Stop. I'll put you in the drawer. Consumer advocacy groups have highlighted specific cases, including documented instances where removing Red 40 from the water supply, it's not actually in the water supply, removing Red 40 and other artificial colors from children's diets then resulted in behavioral improvements. You have to do that though with the natural alternative though. So like instead of doing Kraft macaroni and cheese, do Annie's. We have to have a valid analog. An Annie-log. I love Annie's mac and cheese. It's so good shit. So anyways, is Red 40 bad? Is it good that it's gone? I say yes. I think it's good that it's gone. I think more regulation for food stuff is good and better. Especially if it's things that are objective. You know, you don't have to argue that it's just visually appealing. It's a non-nutritive substance. Get rid of it. Who cares? Because you can use things that are nutritive to dye your products instead of just red stuff. Also, beets and carrots purple carrots make stuff very red. We have red candy that looks red. Nobody's ever complained about the lack of redness. It's only when you don't use enough. We have a 5-gallon pail of red dye in the warehouse right now. It's $6,000 for a 5-gallon pail. $6,000. It's very expensive. So yeah, it's very interesting. The whole Red 40 thing, it's a bit of a meme lately, and also, you know, it's a home hitter for me because I make candy and we use red dyes. We don't use synthetic dyes, but it is red and it's optional. A lot of our competitors only use the synthetic variants because they're cheaper. They're not any more red. It's more difficult to achieve the red color because it's more expensive. So it's all just money shit, which I totally get. You gotta make money. You gotta make money. It costs more, etc. Bada bing, bada boom, or whatever the fuck. But food additives, they exist at an intersection of science, commerce, and public policy, and culture, in all honesty. And all these decisions affect millions of consumers and people daily. I'm personally excited that manufacturers have to reformulate thousands of their subpar products to being par by 2026, and I'm excited to see what people's thoughts and feedback are.